Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. On behalf of the Hutchinson Reno County Chamber of Commerce, I would love to welcome you to this first of our primary election candidate forums for this session. And tonight we're going to be hearing from Kansas District 34, Kansas House Districts 102 and 114, the candidates running for those seats. My name is Deborah Tufel. I'm the president of your Hutchinson Reno County Chamber, and I am going to be your moderator this evening. So we have a few ground rules we're going to talk about and many thank yous to share. So on behalf of the Chamber, we just really appreciate you coming out to listen to the issues, greet the candidates, and most importantly, to the candidates that are joining me on the stage tonight for taking their time to run for office and for being here this evening. Let's show them our appreciation. We would also like to share our appreciation tonight to the Hutchinson Community College and their staff for use of this great venue and assisting us with all of the technology and things that make this facility run. It's going to be a great evening. We also want to thank our presenting sponsor, AT&T, along with Hutchinson Regional Healthcare System as our supporting sponsor. They sponsor things year in, year out, but most importantly, all of our legislative forums and issues like this. Thank you also to the media for being here tonight to cover this event, and to our Reno County Chamber members who submitted some of the questions that you're going to hear tonight that come straight from those policies that are important to our businesses and our members, and also to our Public Policy Committee members who meet throughout the year on topics of importance to our membership. This is the first debate the Chamber is organizing for this primary season. The second will be next Tuesday at the same time and same location, where we will host the candidates for the Reno County Commission. As a reminder, the Hutchinson Reno County Chamber does not endorse candidates. However, it is part of our mission to organize opportunities for our members and the community to learn about public policy issues and engage in opportunities like this, to hear about those positions from those seeking office to represent us. The discussion tonight will feature these contested races for the primary election, which will be held on August 6th. So next, I would like to introduce our candidates, who I know you are all excited to hear from tonight. We are joined by these 6 candidates for the primaries for Senate District 34. The Republican Party candidates for this district include Bob Fee from Hutchinson, and opponent Michael Murphy from Sylvia, who has currently served as our House District 114 legislator for the last 4 years. Please give them a round of applause. You'll note that the districts that are not represented tonight did not have opposition in the primary, and therefore they're not on the stage tonight, but we will hold another debate before the general election, so you'll have an opportunity to hear from all of those candidates then. Next, from District 102, we have Republican Party candidates Kyler Sweely and opponent Tyson Thrall, both from Hutchinson. Let's welcome them. And then lastly, from District 114, the Republican Party candidates, including Steve Schweitzer of Plevna and Kevin Schwertfeger of Turon. Let's welcome them. Candidates, we are all very grateful for your participation, 100% participation tonight. That's wonderful. The format for both the Senate and House candidates is going to begin with a 2-minute opening statement, and then at the end of the debate tonight, we will conclude with a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. We have a series of about 10 questions. We hope to get to all of those that have been prepared by our Public Policy Committee. And the questions will be asked and the candidates will begin responding in order by district number here on the left and to the right, alphabetically by last name. And we will rotate then on the subsequent questions, the first respondent for each question. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond. The first person to answer the question then in each district will have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal to their opponent, and then we will move to the next subsequent district. We hope to keep responses on time, and so we have a timekeeper. Leanne Cox is down in front. She will hold up a yellow card when there are 30 seconds remaining for the response, and then when you hear this bell sound, she will hold up a red card to identify that 1 minute is up. And we reserve the right to jump in after the bell rings. We rarely have to do that. I know you guys will be on time. All right, finally, before we begin, for the audience, we ask everyone to please be respectful of all of the candidates on the stage. Please refrain from booing or interruptions during the Q&A. and don't obstruct the view of those seated behind you with signs or flags. Applause is welcome, of course, but please keep our other noise to a minimum to be respectful of your neighbors, and please remember to silence your cell phones. Thank you for your cooperation and for being here. The Public Policy Committee is pleased to start welcoming these 6 candidates with some policy-based questions, but first, we will begin with their opening statements. So the order of responses will be, like I said, by order of district number and last name. So we will begin with District 34 with Mr. Bob Fee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for supporting or sponsoring this. We really appreciate having this forum. I am Bob Fee. I am a lifelong Hutchinson resident, born and raised here. I had 4 great years at the University of Kansas and then decided to come back and join my dad and brother in business at Fee Insurance Group and have been there for the last 37 years. Over that time, and I should say during that time and during my growing up period, my mom and dad instilled in all of us a sense of service, a sense of giving back to the community and giving back to the industry which you are a part of. And over the years that I've been here in Hutchinson, I've tried to honor that and do that. Over the years, I've served as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce here, chairman of the Cosmosphere Board, chairman of the YMCA board, and I currently serve on the Metro Board of Wichita YMCA. I serve on the Homeless Shelter Board, the New Beginnings Board, as well as the Los V. Smith Senior Center, countless others. The job that I felt like I've always had to do was give back to the community. In our industry, I served on our state association at the Kansas Association of Insurance Agents. I served as our board member and then eventually president in 2007 and 8, and then went on to our national board, the IIABA, Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America, and served as chairman of that board in 2022. Service and public service go hand in hand. As a public servant, I hope to serve the people of the 34th District and will do my best to do so. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from his opponent in the 34th District, current Representative Michael Murphy.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm Michael Murphy. I'm a retired captain with United Airlines. We moved back here in 1990. I originally lived in Kansas before, and we moved back. Great place to raise the family and the kids. Flew 747s and 777s around the world, and a lot of responsibility and all like that with that. We've got a farm near Sylvia where we have a bed and breakfast, and my wife and I run that. And typically our guests are hunters throughout the winter time, and then throughout the rest of the time we do have a lot of groups and families who stay with us. We set up our house with a space for my father who had Alzheimer's, and so for the first 3 years we were in that house, we took care of him till he passed in 2013. And currently we have my wife's mother there, and we're taking care of her. We've been married 43 years, 4 adult children, and 14 grandkids. And by the way, I'm the best beepaw ever. I'm just completing my 4th year as a state representative, and I feel like I've done a good job of protecting our God-given rights. That's what I feel like my job is, and our constitutional freedoms. I'm looking to move over and take that job over into the Senate. I'm concerned for our country and our state, and I think there's some things that need to be addressed further than what I've already been able to do, and I hope to continue the work that I started, and appreciate the opportunity to serve in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Next, we will hear from the candidate in the 102nd House District. First, Mr. Kyler Sweely.
Hi, I'm Kyler Sweely. I want to thank the Chamber for having me. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's a pleasure to be here in front of all of you. I was born and raised in Newton, Kansas. I joined the Army after high school, where I served 5 years and did 2 deployments overseas, a combat deployment to the Middle East and 1 deployment to Eastern Europe. I left the Army in 2022 as a sergeant and a tank gunner, and I got involved in the local chapter of Young Republicans, where I was named chair. And ever since, I've been involved with working on campaigns. And I was a staffer the last 2 years in Topeka, where I worked on the Public Safety and Transportation Budget Committee. I was a committee assistant. We worked with, Kansas Department of Corrections, the Bureau of Investigation, Department of Transportation, Kansas Highway Patrol, other law enforcement agencies like that. And I was very proud to, be a part of that and be a part of fighting the fight on fentanyl and everything like that. So I think we can all agree there's a lot of problems in, D.C. and in Topeka with the administrations we're currently serving with. And I think we need someone to stand up for what's right. And I think Hutchinson needs a new representative, someone to stand up for what's right, not be deadlocked with the Democratic Party and with Joe Biden. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweely. Next, we will hear from his opponent, Mr. Tyson Thrall.
Hello, my name is Tyson Thrall. I am coming up on 10 years married to my beautiful wife, Kayla, right there. We have 3 children, 4, 2, and newly born June 1st. So 2 boys and a girl. I am running for the 102nd because the walls of our republic are crumbling, for lack of a better term. Let's go back to the Old Testament in Nehemiah. When he was coming back from captivity, he said, "Let us rebuild the walls, lest we be a reproach to the Lord." So I'm not talking about just physical walls. I'm talking about principles. The principles that our country was founded upon, we need to rebuild those. So I will come at everything from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective, and I will run every piece of legislation through what are called the LIFT principles. The LIFT principles stand for LIFT. L is limited government. I is individual liberties. F is free enterprise. And T is timeless truths. Timeless truths. You see, the founders understood that truth was real and that it was timeless. It spanned all time. So, and that's what they were able to build this Constitution on, and that's what I would seek to empower us to continue to do that, and that's what you will find in me as a candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrall. Next, we have the 2 candidates for the 114th House District. First, we will hear from Mr. Steve Schweitzer.
Good evening. Hey, there we go. My name is Steve Schweitzer. I want to thank you all for coming here this evening. Thank you, the Chamber, for inviting us here this evening. I'm a little concerned. I see some of my former teachers out in the crowd and some people that knew me when I was a really young squirt running around western Reno County. But anyway, I've been a lifelong Reno County resident and been involved just on the local level. A township board here recently, but on the Ark Valley Electric Co-op board, I served a one 12-year stint. Was off for a year, and I got back on the board then. The members decided to have me back on again. It's part of my experience there. Experience with some bond committees on a local school district. My wife and I have been married for, I got to remember, 36 years. We've got 5 children between the 2 of us and 22 grandchildren. And we'd like to see a better community, a better world for our grandkids and what we see happening right at the moment. So I haven't really had aspirations of politics, but I was asked if I would be willing. There's a need for men to step up, people to step up, fill those positions, and I felt led through prayer and thought that this was where I was being led to go. So here I am this evening. There's a lot of concerns that have been expressed to me since people found out that I'm running for office. Go figure. They don't express those concerns typically, but then when they find out you're running for office, those things come to mind. And so I've got an awful lot to learn running for this position, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to represent all the constituents of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And next, we will hear from his opponent, Mr. Kevin Schwertfeger.
Hi, I'm Kevin Schwertfeger. I'm running with Steve for the 114th District. before I say any more, I want to recognize my wife, if she'd stand up in the middle of the crowd. As the song goes, she is the wind beneath my wings. I'm also, as Steve's, along with him, am a lifetime Reno County resident. I was born in Stafford, grew up at Turon, went to Langdon Fairfield High School, then came to HCC. I was in the very first choir that got to sing here in Stringer Fine Arts Center. That was a good time to be in the new facility. I'm running because I'm concerned and want to make a difference for my district, and would like to see a stronger Kansas, see things improved from the local level all the way to the governorship and to replace our president who's having a difficult time. If I slow down, all I could say, well, we beat Medicare, but oh dear. So we hope we finish well. I work as an independent crop consultant. I help manage thousands of acres in Pratt, Reno County, and Kingman County, Stafford County, and Barber County. I also farm and have run some cattle in the wintertime, and my time's up, so I'll yield. But if you want to look for more information on me, ksforkansas.com, KS for Kansas.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, I know we're going to get to some serious issues in tonight's program, but I just have to say my hardest job is keeping straight Schweitzer and Schwertfeger many times. All right. We'll see how we do. All right, so we're going to start with our first question, and we're going to address that to our 34 Senate District candidates, starting with Bob Fee, and then Michael, you'll respond, and then Mr. Fee, you'll have a 30-second rebuttal if you wish. Our first question. Each of you are running because you clearly care about our communities and the future of the state of Kansas. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Good question. While I've been going to a lot of doors lately, the number one issue that I've heard about and the greatest concern is property taxes. And property taxes in the state of Kansas have skyrocketed over the last 10 years for multiple reasons. And we've tried to keep mill levies even, but valuations have gone up. The state of Kansas just passed a tax reduction, but not very much of that was property tax reduction. And so that's one. So one, and two, education. We need to be the best in class in education. And 3, economic development for our district.
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. I'd go along with the property taxes. Actually, I brought an amendment to the budget to lower property taxes that got vetoed, and then we got that run across as a bill that we passed, and that got vetoed as well. So I do have a record of having that in mind and making that a priority. I also have a plan I'm working on that could ultimately eliminate property taxes, and everybody I talk to likes that idea. So I think there's a way to do that. I want to continue the work that I started, fighting the ESG issues where outside forces come in and tell Kansans what they can do and how to operate and who they have to hire and who they have to have on their boards. And education is important as well. We're spending a lot of money and we're not getting a lot of results. And we also, I'm certainly in favor of doing something to help the homeschoolers in relation to that. Thank you.
Mr. Fee, do you have a rebuttal or comment?
I would be very interested in hearing how we can eliminate property tax. So I hope that we can get into how that plan would work and what that looks like. Thanks.
All right, next, same question for the 102nd House District. Kyler Sweely, again, I'll just restate the question. Each of you are running because you clearly care about our communities and the future of the state of Kansas. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
I hate to concur with everyone and just reiterate the exact same thing, but property tax is one of the biggest issues that we're facing in Kansas. We need to stop pricing people out of their homes, and we have to have people have money in their pocket. So economic development is probably not in order, but one of them up there. There's a $1 billion plan or multi-$100 million plan for Evergy that came in. We have the energy infrastructure, and we need to keep, Hutch has the jobs, and we need to keep filling those. Last one, we need to show our support for the border crisis. Everyone, the state can do enough, but we haven't done enough. There's resolutions, there's money that we could have sent the National Guard to help support. The drugs, the influx of drugs, human trafficking, sex trafficking is going to Kansas. It's not staying in Texas. It's not staying in California. It's coming here, and it's coming to other states, and it's paid by our tax dollars. So,
Mr. Thrall?
I would agree with Mike on the property tax and everybody else, really. That would be a high priority there. Also, education. Like I said, we're paying a lot in our budget, and we're just not getting the results we are. Would want to champion school choice and just advance that. I think that we should encourage competition, because competition always breeds excellence. I also am concerned and would say that I would like to have biological males with biological males and females with females, and those would be my top priorities. I don't think it's fair what's going on around there, and that we would just speak truth and live real truth.
All right, and Mr. Sweely, do you have any rebuttal?
The common lie always was, the state can't fix property tax, and the state can. There was a tax break, like Bob said, and we haven't done enough for our citizens. And the second I get in there, we're working on property tax. I can assure you that. That's one of the biggest things I'm going for. The same thing with the border. Everyone says we can't fix the border, but we can. There's a House resolution this year. The governor voted against it. My Democratic opponent voted against it. They've both voted against sending the National Guard to the border to show our support for Governor Greg Abbott, and we failed to do that.
All right, next. Same question for the 114th House District. We'll start with Steve Schweitzer. Sure. Each of you are running because you clearly care about our communities and the future of the state of Kansas. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Well, I'm going to state the property tax again, but way more than that, just the business taxes in general. To attract workers to our state, we need to have more competition, and to do that, I think businesses in general need to have a fair tax plan. The other thing is, out in our rural areas that we're in right now, we're seeing, under the previous administration, we had the first time in my lifetime, we had energy independence. We had the rollback of EPA regulations. We had a rollback of Waters of the U.S. regulations, and those are bureaucracies. And we're seeing those ramp back up again, where we're having to battle for water rights, having to battle for just managing the water. And it's taking those rights away from the landowners and put it in the hands of the federal government. And so there's a lot of ways we need to stand up for Kansans and protect them from the federal government. The other thing I see is, we see a lot of renewable energy being developed. Oh, sorry.
All right, and then we will have 1 minute from Kevin Schwertfeger.
I agree with Steve. We need property tax relief, limit or eliminate that if we could. You hear stories about elderly people having difficulty paying for their taxes, and if they're on fixed incomes, that's just a real difficult challenge for them. I attended a water pack meeting with the Quivira National Wildlife Refuge. That has been a challenge for our poor farmers to the west of us. They're trying to regulate them almost out of business, in cutting their irrigation that they've invested thousands of dollars, and we need to recognize the economic impact that for the sake of some ducks, that we're going to cut their water significantly back.
All right, thank you.
I'd love to talk longer, but I got to quit.
All right, and Mr. Schweitzer, do you have a 30-second rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so for question 2, thank you all. Great commentary. Okay, so we're going to then rotate, and now the 102nd House District will begin this question first, and Tyson will get to go first, and subsequently then Kyler Sweely. So for you gentlemen, the Kansas legislature convened in special session this summer to pass a tax policy to reduce the tax burden on Kansans. Do you think that legislation went far enough to reduce the tax burden, and what would you specifically do to change it?
Well, I don't know a lot about that specific legislation, but from what I'm hearing up here, it sounds like it didn't go far enough. Obviously, I'd like to continue further. I think the plan that Mike Murphy is looking forward to with the consumption tax, I think that's a viable option, and I'd like to look forward and move forward with something like that to take the tax burden down and to make us more competitive in the marketplace. I just think that Kansas is not a people are not seeking to move here, primarily because of the tax burden, so we need to do more in that regard, and I would seek to, obviously, for sure, do that.
Okay, and Mr. Sweely?
Absolutely not. The legislature, both chambers passed, I believe, 7 tax breaks. The governor vetoed them all. They were called back on a special session, which is money out of your guys' pockets. I think upwards of $80,000 a day to have everyone there, all the research staff. We didn't do anything, I don't believe, for Social Security tax or property tax or enough. We need to get rid of this, and we need people staying in Kansas. So everyone's moving out. You can't. As a young person, you can't be here and have stuff to do and live here, or as a retiree, it's too expensive. You get priced out of Kansas, and we have Kansans leaving at a huge rate, and we're not keeping up with it. We're not doing the right thing, and we're failing Kansas right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweely. Mr. Thrall, do you have a 30-second rebuttal or comment?
I think it's even 10 years ago at least, Kansas was the most moved out of state at the time. And you know where the most moved into state was? It was actually Oregon. Now, don't get me wrong, Oregon's a really pretty place, but politically, it's ridiculous. So how can we just continue to lose and lose and lose? We need to do better. We need to cut the taxes. We need to become more competitive, because the free enterprise, the free market is where we need to go, and that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thrall. Next, for the 114th House District, we'll begin this question with Kevin Schwertfeger, and again, the same question. Do you think that the legislation went far enough to reduce the tax burden, and what would you specifically do?
I'm not quite familiar with legislation. However, I would say that our governor would probably veto it. So we've got to have legislators in position, and a good amount of them to override her vetoes. And we need a reasonable governor that recognizes good legislation that will go along with tax relief. This somewhat hits home with me. I was visiting with a neighbor not far from us. He was going to move back to Oklahoma. His family were moving and living there because they had better tax rates there. And for veterans, the property tax was not there. So there was an incentive for him to be pulled to Oklahoma. And we could do more and do better things. We just need better leadership.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And Steve Schweitzer?
Well, it's easy to say that the cuts probably weren't enough, but what was interesting about this, from what I understand, is it was a truly united bipartisan effort to pass the tax plan that they did, and yet when it made it to the governor's desk, she vetoed it. I know they grew the budget. I know they grew the state as far as that goes. And it's a lot harder when you have to compromise with others across the aisle, to work out a budget. But it's maybe a step in the right direction, and we can do better. It's going to take more effort. But to be more competitive, that's the main thing we need to be, and so that's what we're going to have to strive for.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And Mr. Schwertfeger, do you have a rebuttal or a comment? No. All right. So we'll come back to this end of the stage, 34th Senate District, and we'll begin with Michael Murphy.
If I remember the question.
All right.
No,
Well, you were there. So the Kansas legislature convened, as you know, in special session this summer to pass a tax policy to reduce taxes on Kansans. Do you think that legislation went far enough to reduce the tax burden, and what would you specifically do?
Well, obviously, I don't agree with what happened, because I think we passed 6 tax plans. And the funny thing is, right at the end of our regular session, we passed one. And then when we came back in special session, we passed, and that got vetoed, and the one we passed in special session was about that much different. I think, in reality, the whole deal about coming back for special session was not for the tax plan, but for the chief's deal. But that's another story. I think it's interesting when they start talking about taxes. I did like the single rate that we had, that we came out with. But the big thing is that they say, well, we can't afford the tax cut. Hello, stop spending so much.
And now we'll have a response from Mr. Fee.
Or answer the question?
Want me to restate the question?
No. Can I answer the question?
Yes, you can answer the question.
No, we did not go far enough. We do have a spending problem. That is the biggest problem that we are facing right now. Our budget has gone up like 35% in the last 5 years as far as spending. Our tax revenues are way up, and we're sitting on almost $3 billion in reserves. We have people out here paying high property tax, and it is a problem for folks. And we really did not address the property tax issue at the state level. I think they taxed at 20 mils. I think they knocked it down to 19. Did not. It needs to be knocked down. If you really want to give tax relief, knock down the mills at the state level. Let the local units of government who rely on that property tax right now, until we have a new tax plan, be able to collect property taxes. That's my view.
All right. And Mr. Murphy, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, we did knock it down, but then that got vetoed, and we ended up back at the 20 mil. And like Bob said, most of the property tax is local. We can't affect a whole lot of it at the state level. Once again, and Tyson kind of alluded to it. The plan I've gotten that I'm working with, and it actually was initiated in Nebraska, is a consumption tax that replaces all of that. The shift on the people, from the people that get sweetheart deals because of the lobby groups, is shifted all to the rest of us.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to question 3, and this one we will begin with the 114th House District, and Mr. Schweitzer, you will go first on this question. Kansas is one of 10 states to have not expanded Medicaid. Would you, if elected, support the expansion of Medicaid in the state? Why or why not?
As far as Medicaid expansion, I would not be in favor of that. Number one, the rural areas would gain the least benefit from that program, from what I understand. But the majority of that, and the biggest reason for that, it's the next step to government-run health care. And for me, and that's, if we want to live with government, we cannot have government involved in the health care program. It's one of the things that I was disappointed when they didn't eliminate the Affordable Care Act altogether. And so I would not be in favor of Medicaid expansion.
All right. And next, Mr. Schwertfeger, your 1-minute answer.
I agree with Steve again. No, I'm not going to vote to increase or let Kansas take on the can care. It leads to socialized medicine. And I see the constitutional issue in the originalist form, and I don't believe we had that quite correct when we passed the Obamacare business. And this is just, I don't think the road we need to go down. We're not socialists, we're a republic, and that's just how it is.
All right, and Mr. Schweitzer, do you have a comment?
No comment.
All right, saving us time. All right, so we'll come back to this end of the table. 34th Senate District candidate Bob Fee. Would you like me to restate the question? Okay.
No, I would not be supportive of the Medicaid expansion. One of the first states that was Republican state to do that was Indiana. And at the beginning of this legislative session in January for Indiana, they were nearly $1 billion underwater when it came to what they owed for the Medicaid. Medicaid numbers were 40% higher than they were projected. The costs were way higher than they projected. Where does that money come from? It's either going to come from those who are already on Medicaid, who it was designed for, or it's going to come from the largest budget item, which is public education. You can't continue to tax and tax and tax and provide entitlements. And that's what this is, and it's starting to be proven over time. 10 years, you got to look out in the future. It's being proven over time that it's not a sustainable social activity.
Thank you, Mr. Fee. And Michael Murphy?
Another no. Yeah, when we look back at the Affordable Care Act, when that was passed 14 years ago, we were promised all sorts of things, and that's the thing about these programs. It's a lot of feel good, but in reality, they don't work. And so we were supposed to save $2,500 per family and have better care and everything like that. Who's been saving money on their health care since then? And the Medicaid expansion was all a part of that deal. Do you understand that when people, if you have private health insurance and you qualify for Medicaid expansion, you're kicked off and you're forced onto Medicaid? There are all sorts of problems. The cost overruns, it runs about 160% over. It's just insane, and the thought that we would even think about it is crazy.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Fee, would you like a rebuttal? No, thanks. All right. Next, the 102nd House District, and Kyler Sweely, would you please answer the question?
It's one of the biggest topics, especially, between the two parties. I would have voted against Medicare expansion for the last couple of years. It's been brought up. It's always been a floor amendment, and many of you probably don't know what that means, but it just gets rushed on the floor. It's pretty much a political hit job that there's not enough time to speak on it. There's not enough time to talk about it, and it's either yes or no right away. You get a couple of people to talk about it or not. There's a lot of flaws in the system. One of the biggest things is the work requirements. A lot of the bills that they brought up have no work requirements, and then it's just the normal taxpayer paying for it. And it's evident that other states have completely gone over spending limits that they thought, and it's just going to continue to do so. It would be an awesome, perfect plan, for everyone to get Medicare and everyone to get health care. It would be awesome, but logically, financially, it's not responsible, and it would not work at all.
And Mr. Thrall?
It's kind of piggyback off what Mike had said. It was like a feel-good type of thing, and borrowing a quote from Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings. So my understanding is 90% of that increase would come from federal dollars, right? Well, where do the feds get their dollars from? Well, you and me, right? So they don't have any of their own, so it's just higher in taxes. So obviously, I'm a big no, just like everybody else here. I would just say we can look back to Indiana, Oklahoma, these places that did that, and we can say, no, that didn't work. It's not going to work here. It didn't work there. So, no.
And Mr. Sweely, do you have any other comment?
I do. It's been brought up in a committee process, and I have full trust in the committee process down in Topeka, and it got voted down this last year. But, we need to focus on, IDD, the wait lists, and everything like that, which is disabled folks. And, they need the health care that they deserve. And even Governor Kelly voted this year against reducing the IDD wait list, which was one of the biggest talks in the legislature this year. I believe it's growing upwards of 750 to 1,000 people a year. And the legislature, cut it 1,000 by this year, and Governor Kelly was opposed to that.
Thank you, Mr. Sweely. Next, question 4. We'll start with 34th Senate District on this question, and Michael Murphy, you will go first on this one. It's kind of in the same theme of taxes, but taking a little bit different take on it. The Chamber supports fiscal responsibility and thoughtful consideration of tax policies at all levels of government. What is your position to continue to make Kansas competitive while also prioritizing investments that enhance the quality of life in our state?
Well, I'm not sure where that question is trying to lead, really, but government has a very limited job, and that is protecting people's rights. And to think that government is supposed to create jobs or incentivize people, they incentivize people by getting out of the way, is what they do. And that's what I've tried to do. It's a mess to think that we can, like the Panasonic deal that was done up there, to give people, give tax dollars to try to incentivize something. Most jobs in this country are small business people that just go out and put their own money at risk. And we need to make that a position of where people can do that without any fear or competition from government.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Fee?
So I'm not an anti-government or anti-tax person. We have to have a government that provides roads, provides protection, law enforcement, education, all the things that we have grown accustomed to as Americans and certainly as Kansans. But when it comes to what the government can and should do, they should be very efficient with the use of our money. They should make sure that people in government are held accountable, that the folks that we ask to do certain jobs within our government do those jobs and do them well. And I think government can do a lot better at that and reduce the spending and reduce the burden while still providing all of the necessities of government. And I'm not sure that fully answered your question, but that's where I would begin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fee. And Mr. Murphy, do you have a response?
Well, not really so much a response as I just think we just need to be careful as government. I didn't mean to make it sound like I'm anti-government or anything like that, if it's what you feel like. But the bottom line is that government has a very limited job, and we need to make sure it stays in its lane and doesn't compete with the people.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Same question for the 102nd House District, and we'll start with Tyson Thrall.
Can you repeat that in its entirety, please?
I would be glad to. The Chamber supports fiscal responsibility and thoughtful consideration of tax policies at all levels of government. What is your position to continue to make Kansas competitive while also prioritizing investments that enhance the quality of life in our state?
I would be more along the lines of the really original intent when it comes to Constitution. The government has, like the federal government, they have 17 enumerated powers, and that's it, right? That's their jurisdiction, and the rest is left up to the state. But at the same time, I think that we need to be careful about leaning on government too much. The way that we pick winners and losers is not via the government, it's between you and me, right, in the marketplace. We say, hey, you make that product really well, I'm going to buy it from you. You do that service really well, I'm going to buy it from you. I don't think that if I want to invest my money, I will invest my money. It's not the government's job to invest it, it's mine. So that's where I sit.
Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Sweely.
I believe the last time I checked, 2014, the state's budget was $13.1 billion, and this year it crossed over $25.2 billion, and it just continues to grow and grow. We have very few for real fiscal conservatives in Topeka, and it shows. I mean, we have, I don't know how many people pay attention, but we have star bonds. It's a flawed system that people can just get our tax dollars pretty much to start up economic development, and a lot of them have failed. And this Chiefs bill brought up was one of them. But, you know, there's certain ones that could work if they're big enough. And I think we just completely give out too many handouts, and we're going to just continue to do so. And it's just continue to make everything else rise.
Thank you, Mr. Sweely. And Mr. Thrall, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I think when you enable somebody, you're not doing them any favors, right? When you hand out, you give them something that they didn't work for, they're not going to appreciate it near as much. So I think we need to quit enabling and more encourage and educate people.
Okay, and then the same question for the 114th House District candidates, and we will begin with Kevin Schwertfeger.
We have to be careful about this enhancement of life. People might have thought that building a EV battery factory in Kansas was a good thing, but EV vehicles really don't fit my part of the world, and some people thought that was an enhancement. We need to stay with our limited role of government and not give these tax breaks to big companies thinking that we're enhancing things so much when we completely need to go the other direction as far as electric vehicles go and maintain what we have, the current system. It's ridiculous that we should even be thinking of going down the road of EVs. For rural Kansas, that just doesn't work.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. And next, we'll have an answer by Steve Schweitzer.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The Hutch Chamber supports fiscal responsibility and thoughtful consideration of tax policies at all levels of government. What is your position to continue to make Kansas competitive while also prioritizing investments that enhance the quality of life in our state?
I think it was mentioned before, is getting government out of the way. Everything can be done more efficiently through private enterprise versus government. Government just seems to have a way of incredibly decreasing efficiency. And I think that would be the first step. When you think about how our life is formed here in the United States and where it's come to at this point in time, how many subsidies are tied to so many different things in our lives, it really is multifaceted on what needs to be done in order to roll those back to make it more business friendly for the rest of the field.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And Mr. Schwertfeger, do you have a rebuttal?
Was it Reagan that said, I'm with the government and I'm here to help? No, just that we need to watch that, and the government needs to tend to be getting out of the way of progress and have that be independent and let things ride out in the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not quite halfway through. We're to question 5. Next, we're going to start this question with the 102nd House District. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. Kyler Sweely, you'll be the first to answer this question. Kansas is one of 4 states where marijuana remains fully illegal. The other states to note are Idaho, South Carolina, and Wyoming. Would you, if elected, support the decriminalization or legalization of medical and or recreational marijuana in Kansas? Why or why not?
Another big topic that's been, Am I on or no? Okay, yeah, it's split to two parties the last couple of years. Medical marijuana, it seems to be the save-all for the Democratic Party and everything. It gets brought up every year in talks, and I would be opposed to the bills that have been brought up. I think that there could be potential benefits. I'll hear out any bill, strictly medicinal, strictly for cancer patients or PTSD or epilepsy, simple stuff like that. I would not support any recreational use, any smokable marijuana or anything like that. It would be strictly a liquid use, and that's it. That's my stance right now, though.
Thank you. And next we will hear the answer from Tyson Thrall.
Recreational marijuana, no, I would not be in favor of that. It just will not fit. I just don't think it's a good idea. Medical marijuana, I think that it will be. I think I've heard some good stories about that. So I think I'm in favor of that, but I think we need to be careful. We need to look a little forward. Look to some other states that have done stuff. Like even my understanding down in Oklahoma, they're like, you know what, we did this, but be careful with what you might incur. My understanding is that they incurred the cartel coming in to their state, and I think we need to be leery of that. Obviously, that's not another fight that we need on our hands, especially with our open borders currently. It'll probably be upon our hands soon anyway. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Sweely, an opportunity to rebut that.
I would be opposed to hearing a very conservative, regulated medical marijuana bill. As of today, I would 100% strike down recreational marijuana. I don't think it belongs in Kansas. I don't like it. I don't want our public spaces, overcrowded with marijuana smell and the smoke and everything like that. But medical for the, medicinal benefits, I could potentially be swayed that way, obviously. Well, not swayed, that's a bad way to put it, but I could be convinced, and if it was, a conservative bill and regulated for sure.
All right, and next, the 114th House District, Steve Schweitzer will go first.
As far as recreational use, absolutely not. It's just a gateway drug to other drugs as far as illegal activity goes. Visiting with law enforcement, I know it's frustrating for them. They're constantly working on cleaning up the neighborhood out there where we live. If you look at between where myself and Kevin live, the country seems to be a good place for people to hide out that don't want to be found. There are promises, for that medical marijuana, but the regulation would have to be well written, and it require a lot of wisdom so that it could be enforceable. But any place that they've legalized marijuana, there's just no way to enforce it as far as traffic laws and that sort of thing.
And Mr. Schwertfeger.
Steve's got it down. No, I'm against marijuana. I'm not going to vote to legalize marijuana, whether it's recreational or medical. There's other medical options that a person can do. A person close to me has a condition that might benefit from medical marijuana, but there's other medicines that can be chosen. You might end up having, if we go down that road, it's a slippery slope. It increases. You might end up having to sell your house and live in a tent in Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. And Steve, do you have a comment or a rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
All right. And next for the 34th Senate District, we'll start with candidate Bob Fee.
I do not believe we should legalize recreational marijuana. And I believe if there is a medical purpose for that drug, it should go through the FDA and be approved, just like every other medical drug is supposed to get approved for the condition and be prescribed. What Tyson talked about down in Oklahoma is real. They've had nothing but problems since they put together a hopscotch bill. And if you want to know what a city can turn into, go out to Seattle sometime and just take a look at what drugs will do to the city. I don't think we want that in this state, and I would not be for it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fee. And Michael Murphy?
Well, I guess we're 100%. Certainly not on recreational. I do know people who've been helped by this sort of thing. I also understand there actually are already pharmaceuticals that use extracts and all like that from marijuana that can already be prescribed. So I think lots of times this turns out to be something we want it for this, but our real thing is to come in around the back door for recreational. I actually was in a briefing with the Oklahoma Attorney General, and he actually said, he said, I'm not saying you shouldn't do this, but you guys better close some doors and fill some holes, or here's what's going to happen to you. And they have a serious problem down there. So I think, anything like that needs very, very careful scrutiny, and I don't think we're capable of doing it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Fee, any other comment? All right. We'll move on to question number 6, and this one we will start with the 114th House District. Kevin Schwertfeger will go first. Many Kansas counties continue to experience population decline for a variety of reasons. What are some policies you would support to stop outmigration and encourage positive growth in the Kansas population?
Property tax relief. We need to try to keep the people that we have here instead of moving elsewhere where they have a lesser tax burden. That would help. That's a tough question because as time goes by, our farms tend to get bigger, and that leads to what we're experiencing. So I'm open for discussion on that subject myself. Over time, we've recognized a decrease, and we keep getting an increase in urban representation, and we need to maintain our rural representation the best we can. So that is a challenging issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. And Steve Schweitzer.
Well, he's hit the nail on the head there with the property tax. It's just mind-boggling when you meet someone that moved here from the state of New York, and they're just flabbergasted at the property tax they're paying on their vehicle. They're paying more for property tax here in Kansas than they are in the state of New York. It just boggles the mind. But part of what we're losing out in the countryside is just a natural attrition, a natural movement to the metropolitan areas. And it's not something we can prevent entirely, but the only way to incentivize staying there is make it more affordable for people to live there. And the taxing is a big thing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And Mr. Schwertfeger, do you have a rebuttal or a comment? No? All right. 34th Senate District. Michael Murphy, this question's yours.
Okay. I'm aware of, in fact, right across the road from us, a house was torn down here fairly recently. It needed some work, but they tore it down because they didn't want to pay the taxes on it. And it could have been repaired and could have been a home for somebody. And I think that's a problem across our rural area. I think we need to look at some way that possibly we can maybe have an abatement or a reduction in taxes on houses that are basically unlivable. So rather than being torn down, they could be repaired. And then once somebody moves into them, once it's livable, then it can be put back on the tax rolls. But as it stands right now, every time that happens, there's tax dollars that are gone that'll probably never come back. And there are other incentives that we can do. Once again, the property tax is a huge deal.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Bob Fee.
I think tax policy all across the board, Kansas is not competitive, not just in our surrounding states, but in the states that surround the surrounding states. So we're a very uncompetitive state when it comes to our tax policy. I think, too, we need to be best in class when it comes to education. Families and businesses will naturally migrate to a place, a state, where they will have wonderful education for the kids that they bring with them. And that's one thing we need to do. And then finally, we need to look for other investment opportunities from the private sector coming into this state. We need to be aggressive at recruiting and looking for those that have money. There are cities, there are communities, there are states that have done that, and we need to study how they've done that and try to implement some of that would work for Kansas.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fee. And Mr. Murphy, you have an opportunity for a rebuttal.
Right. This is something that's been brought up several times by most people. We certainly have a spending problem, and we've got to get that under control. We have the 12th highest tax burden on our citizens in the nation. Now, why is Kansas number 12? That's insane. We've got to get things in check. That's going to require some things at the local level as well as the state level, and give an opportunity for people to want to come back rather than incentivize them with some kind of a cash deal to just make it a place they want to come.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. And next, the 102nd House District will start with Tyson Thrall.
I have traveled many places. I've gone to China, I've gone to Nepal, I've gone to Italy, Austria, several states, Mexico. And I think we can all agree that Kansas has some of the most beautiful sunsets, right? We just come back here and we can just, the clouds, the sky, the purple, it's just beautiful. That's not enough, right? We've got to lower the tax burden in order to encourage people to come here. It's not enough. We need to do more in that regard. Now that's what I would be in favor of. Obviously, however we're going to do that, we can put our heads together and figure that out. It's going to be painful somewhere, but that's just how it has to be. So.
Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And next we'll hear from Kyler Sweely.
I hate to beat a dead horse, but obviously, the tax system is flawed. We had, I believe it was 7 tax bills that were up, and, the Democrats and Governor Kelly vetoed them, saying they were too expensive. And then, it wasn't enough for sure, but we need to, get a hand on this tax situation, and then we need to incentivize people to stay here. We need the younger generation with good, high-paying jobs to stay here, and we need the older generation to stay here and not get taxed ridiculously on Social Security and disability benefits and everything like that. We're just letting people leave at this time. I mean, this is every young person graduates college, leaves the state because there's no good high-paying jobs, and we don't incentivize businesses to come here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweely. Mr. Thrall, do you have a rebuttal?
What a ridiculous idea that we would tax Social Security. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like you put it in, you just get it back, and that's it. Like, why do we need to get more from you? It's ridiculous.
All right, we're to question 7, and this one will be back at this end of the table. We'll start with the 34th Senate District. Bob Fee will go first. Question 7. Childcare and early childhood education are important topics for the future of Kansans. Currently, pre-K students are funded at half-time, but many school districts provide an all-day option for students between the ages of 3 to 5. What is your position on funding for full-time pre-K in Kansas?
Well, that's a really good question. K through 12 education takes about 45% already of our state general fund budget. Parents have ceded their responsibilities to the school system. And as a result, those costs are going to continue to go up. Is it the school system's responsibility to begin now child care? That's a hard question to answer because parents are ceding that to them. But I think at some point, if parents are going to do that, parents are going to have to be the ones to step up and pay for that. So I don't think you put all of the responsibilities of raising our children from basically birth through college on the taxpayer without putting back responsibility on the people that are having those kids. And so I'm very concerned about child care because it's a huge issue and it's one that needs to be figured out. But to put it back on the educational system is just more money going to education.
Thank you, Mr. Fee. And Mr. Michael Murphy, your response?
I actually agree with every word. Our educational system has graduated to become basically babysitter and daycare, and as well as a cafeteria. The more you do for people, the more they expect, and the less they do for themselves. We need to start holding people accountable. Our schools need to be held accountable for the quality of the education that they're putting out, as well as parents need to be accountable for the kids that they're putting out. We have a terrible problem with behavior in the schools, and it's just a mess, and it's largely because our society's a mess. We just need to get back to God. That's all there is to it.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Fee, do you have a rebuttal?
The only thing I would say is that we do have a child care problem, and there has been money that came through the ARPA funds and so forth that are and I know there are people here that are studying what we do and how we do it, and we do need to come to some solutions. We do need to have child care for the working families that are out there. And how we do that is something that I think we need a lot of groups coming together and really working on. But more tax dollars constantly going that direction is going to be hard to sell.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fee. Same question for the 102nd House District candidates. Kyler Sweely.
Can you ask the whole question in its entirety, please?
Sure. Childcare and early childhood education are both important topics for the future of Kansans. Currently, pre-K students are funded by the state at half-time, but many school districts provide an all-day option for students between the ages of 3 to 5. What is your position on funding for full-time pre-K in Kansas?
You know, schools the last couple of years have been fully funded, and, you know, we just see an ever-growing budget for sure. Education is important for sure, but we need to get a hand on this for sure. Oh, I just keep saying for sure. I apologize. But, you know, child care is one of the biggest problems that I see at the door when I'm knocking in the district. You know, it just gets continued. The prices raised, the rates raised, and, you know, parents can't afford it at all. And this is what we're doing. We're setting ourselves up for failure by continuing to spend and continuing these child care rates and not providing for our children. And we need to step up to the plate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sweely. And Tyson Thrall?
I think that's far too early to give your kids over to a system like that. As I recently was very excited to get this shirt in the mail. I was so excited. I bought it from Angel Studios, by the way, and it was from the Tuttle Twins, and I bought it for my wife. I was really excited, and I was like, here it is. And it says, I don't co-parent with the government. And so I just don't think that as a dad of young children, there's no way. I mean, here's the thing. We all know if you have kids, it's difficult to have kids. But we don't shirk our responsibility and just pawn them off over here. We have to be responsible, and we have to do the hard things. Otherwise, we're going to live in a nanny state, and it's just not going to be good. So
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Sweely, any rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
All right. So next, the 114th House District, Steve Schweitzer, same question.
Well, I know child care is a big thing for a lot of families right now, especially with both parents working, extra inflation. But more government funding, I don't believe, is the answer. We do need a solution to this because it is affecting a lot of families, and it doesn't matter what part of the region they're in. But more government spending, I don't believe, is the issue. You know, I think back at 2 generations, there was no government school program that provided lunch. It was provided by the families of the school children. And so it's interesting how far we've come. We've got a society now that's expecting the government to take care of everything, and we just don't have the resources to do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And next, an answer to the question by Kevin Schwertfeger.
Our children are a gift from God. We also need to recognize our children are our parents' responsibility. not the government's responsibility. I served on the school board for USD 310, and it was sad to me to see in our preschool program that we had a number of parents who I know they could come up with $1 a day to feed snacks to their kids, but they would refuse to pay the bill. So eventually then we had to eat that because we couldn't not feed the kids. And no, I don't think we need to increase the government's role. We need to reemphasize children are the parents' responsibility. And so that's how it is.
Thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. And Mr. Schweitzer, you have an opportunity for a rebuttal if you wish.
No rebuttal.
All right. All right, moving on to question 8, and this one we will begin with the 102nd House District and Tyson Thrall. This will be your question first. Question 8, the Chamber believes it is important for Kansas to maintain programs and tools that support economic development, including competitive incentives and investments in workforce training specifically that allow businesses to have trained workers. If elected, what policies do you support to encourage existing and new business investment in Kansas?
I don't support the government investing in new businesses. I just support the new businesses investing in themselves. I just don't know how else to really answer that question. I just don't think we need to be involved in. We just need to get out of the way and let them win or let them lose, let them live and let them die. I mean, that's just how the free market works. It might sound harsh, but really, ultimately, it's just better. So that's how I would view that.
All right, thanks, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Kyler Sweely?
I was kind of confused on the policy part. Can you ask that again, please?
Sure, it is kind of a two-part question. The Chamber believes it's important for Kansas to maintain programs and tools that support competitive economic development, including competitive incentives and investments in workforce training that allow businesses that locate here to have trained workers. If elected, what policies do you support to encourage existing and new businesses to invest in Kansas?
I don't know what policy would have to do with that. Usually it's, star bonds are the big thing that brings economic development to Kansas, and they've been abused. I think, all of them but 2 have failed miserably, and one was the Hollywood Casino and the racetrack in Kansas City. There's never economic development here in Hutch. There's never economic development other than anywhere in the northeast corner. I mean, it's just continue to go to Kansas City, Johnson County, and we're just failing miserably at bringing economic development or businesses incentivized to the rural areas or the middle part of the state or any western, heaven forbid, western Kansas. I mean, we just leave them out to dry every single time. We need to continue to look at our best options to bring businesses to Kansas. And I'm not saying give out handouts or anything like that, but most of these incentives bring jobs, they bring high-paying jobs, and they bring families to Kansas. So we need to look at the best option. I'm not saying we have to do it, but we need to look at our best options.
All right, thanks, Mr. Sweely. And Mr. Thrall, any rebuttal?
No rebuttal. I'm just looking forward to everyone else's response to the two-part, very long question. Thank you.
All right. I am as well. All right, so the 114th House District, Kevin Schwertfeger, this one's yours first.
I like the 102nd answers to those. I'd like to copy Tyson Thrall's answer, and you have to be careful with the government, with the star bonds. In the free market system that we have, yes, we can provide incentives, but the government is not always here to help us. The government needs to often get out of the way and let the marketplace take care of the marketplace and not interfere. So in that way, I'm kind of more an originalist.
All right, thanks, Mr. Schwertfeger and Mr. Schweitzer.
Well, just thinking about your question there, I'm trying to remember, when I was in high school, we had an auto shop, we had a wood shop, we had a metal shop. There was a significant investment in the trades in our school system. And I'm just trying to think here, as we're answering this question, what happened to that money that we used to invest in the trades at the high school level? If we had that much investment now, how many more students would have a well-paying job when they left high school versus, no opportunity at all? And so I think gearing towards that, and not necessarily maybe through government funding, but just returning to the trades and trades training.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schweitzer and Mr. Schwertfeger. Any rebuttal?
Thank you, Steve.
All right, these two are getting along famously. Okay, 34th Senate District, Michael Murphy.
Well, what I would do is what I did. When I got to looking at this, there's programs in the schools to help teach kids to get a technical certificate. But then they would never get the test, they would never get the certificate. And so we were spending a lot of money and nothing was happening. We did a test out in Deerfield, and the first year out of 13 kids that took the course, 1 took the test. We had the school pay for the test the following year. 12 kids took the course, all 12 got the certificate. So we got legislation through. It's now law that the schools pay for the test. And so these kids can come out with a CNA, they can get welding, woodworking, there's all sorts of things they can get. And the cost on that was very low. We're spending so much money on education already, we felt like that was something that could be easily absorbed, and it was. And we think it's going to pay great dividends.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Fee.
We're sitting here at HCC, and we have a lot of workforce development programs that happen right here in our town, in our community. And this is going on across the state. This is one of the investments that I think the state has made that is a wonderful investment when it comes to economic development and recruitment and retention of people. Regulations is another thing that the state of Kansas can do. A decrease in regulations to work with industry, we talked about child care earlier, work with the child care industry to figure out what is causing people not to get into that business. We need to get out of the way. We need to help people with institutions like this one and our K through 12 schools so that we are training kids to have a future, and hopefully that future will be here in the state of Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Fee and Mr. Murphy. Any rebuttal?
I would just add that all these community colleges around the state, they're the ones that actually teach these programs. So these high school seniors are taking these programs, Hutchinson, Pratt, Barton County, et cetera. Those are all being utilized, and once again, I think this is going to be a great thing going forward.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we're ready for question 9, and this one begins the 114th House District. Steve Schweitzer will respond to this question first. If elected, what committees would you feel are a priority for you to serve on, and how would you engage with your constituents to ensure you are representing their interests on those committees?
Well, a couple of committees that come to mind would be Ag Committee, anything related to ag. Another thing would be utilities. Experience with Ark Valley Electric Cooperative has been a really good experience for me. I've really learned a lot there. In fact, some of the things that we're dealing with as a state in renewables generation and transmission lines is something that's going to need attention down the road, because there's too many people that live outside our state that see us nothing but wind generation and solar panels from border to border. They don't see us as food production, that sort of thing. And so that's one of the things we need to stand up for the citizens of Kansas in regards to that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And Kevin Schwertfeger.
Agriculture Committee. I come from an agriculture background, as an independent crop consultant, farmer, and agronomist. Water Committee. I've been to water pack meetings. We have to be careful on the regulations that we put our farmers onto, and recognize for the sake of the ducks, you might hurt the pheasants if you turn the irrigation off. And natural resources. I sat before a committee on natural resources, being chairman or vice chairman of the Haynesville Property Surface and Mineral Rights Association years ago, when a large company annexed our area, and we had a group of citizens that fought against that, and we won the battle with the Supreme Court of Kansas that I had the privilege of speaking to.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. Mr. Schweitzer, do you have any comment?
I have no rebuttal.
All right. Next, 34th Senate District candidate Bob Fee.
I think I would enjoy serving on the Ways and Means Committee. I think that's where you will have an impact on spending, state spending, and what that looks like, putting the budget together every year and being able to question all of the different aspects of our state government. A natural one for me would be insurance and financial institutions. That has a great deal of interest to me, obviously, and having spent 37 years in the insurance industry, it would be a natural. And then a third would be education. I'd like to really dig into what we are doing educationally here in the state of Kansas and see where we can become best in class.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fee. And Mr. Murphy?
Well, I've served on water, education, ag, and legislative modernization. Going over to the other side, similar things. I would probably like to also be on Fed and State over there. That's where a lot of stuff is done. My passion is more in dealing with limiting government and protecting people's rights, and I feel like that the Fed and State is a good fit for me.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fee, any other comments? And for the 102nd House District, Mr. Sweely?
My number one choice would be appropriations on the House side. It's the same thing what Bob said. It's the same as Ways and Means, but this is where all the money comes from. It's where the money gets divvied out. And, you just see every government or every state agency come in and say, we need more positions filled. We need this amount of money, and this is where we can be real fiscal conservatives about this. We need to shut down spending, and we can fully fund all the agencies that need stuff. And other than that, we need to cut back as much as we can. My second and third would probably be veterans and transportation and public safety. I worked on the transportation and public safety budget already with some of the law enforcement agencies, transportation, and I understand that budget really well, and I think that's where some of the most spending comes from in the state, and we need to work as hard as we can on that. And then veterans would be obvious. I want to, fully be a part of fixing the problem with the VAs for our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Sweely. And Mr. Tyson Thrall?
Those all sound very intriguing. Mike, you said Fed and State was one of those? Is that right? Okay, that would be one I'd be very interested in, especially for limited government from that perspective. Education, I think, would be another one that I'd be very excited to get on, just to know, what is it that we're doing, where do we need to change, and stuff like that. So I think those two committees would be very fun to me, I think. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Sweely, any other comment on that question? All right. Moving on to question 10. This one will start with the 34th Senate District. Michael Murphy, you'll go first on this one. Reno County has benefited from the State Highway Fund for many years. However, sometimes the legislature has had to borrow against the Highway Fund. Are future investments in the state highway system a priority for you if elected?
Well, it's one of the fundamental purposes of government is to take care of roads and bridges and infrastructure and all like that. I think sometimes they do crazy things. with good intentions when they like reroute a road and they have to buy a lot of ground and condemn things, and it just runs the cost way up. I think there are a lot of ways they could probably cut the corners on that a little bit and save the taxpayers some money. But certainly, once again, it's a core part of what government does, and certainly it should be funded. Most of it is funded, self-funded by fuel taxes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Fee.
Yes, I would be very supportive of that. I remember very well the days of K96 being a two-lane road and the truck traffic on that road, and K61. We've done a lot of great things in Reno County over the years in working with the legislature and working on transportation enhancements. And that does come with a cost down the road, because when you do build these roads, you've got to maintain these roads, and that's going to be continual. So I am supportive and would work toward continuing what we have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fee. Mr. Murphy, any other commentary on that topic?
I would just add, lots of times counties end up kind of with the short end of the stick. If a state changes from a state highway and they give it to the county, then the county ends up having to maintain it and all like that. And sometimes there's bridges and such. The Woody Seat is one that comes to mind. And we did get involved in that, some of the local legislators, and tried to get some help with that. So hopefully that situation can be dealt with.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. So moving on to the 102nd House District, Tyson.
I'm just like what Mike said. I think it's a core power principle in the Constitution that it is government's job to provide roads, bridges, highways, things like that. So I'm very in favor of that. Whatever we need to do. Obviously, I don't want to waste where we don't need to. I want to do it more efficiently, just like we'd seek to do anything more efficiently. If we were running our own business, we'd want to do it most efficiently. So that's how I would seek to do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And next, Kyler Sweely.
Can you ask that question again, please?
Sure. Reno County has benefited from the State Highway Fund for many years. However, sometimes the legislature has had to borrow against that highway fund. Are future investments in the state highway system a priority if elected?
So I worked on this in, the committee assistant job that I had. This is kind of the thing that I was working on, the budgets and everything. And, we need to keep continuing to fund our highways and our roads and at the state level, but making it fiscally conservative and responsible. We have we're indebted to our our citizens that we need to give them able roads and safe roads to travel on, and we need to continue to do so.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sweely. Mr. Thrall, any rebuttal to that? All right. And the 114th House District, Kevin Schwertfeger, we'll have you go first.
I like Mike Murphy's answer. It's not a blank check, though. If you've driven on K61 between Langdon and Pratt, it's not that good a shape. And they could have done a better job, and they need to come back. But are they going to come back? I don't think they are. It's rough. I drove my pickup over it, and I thought my first trip across, my transmission was going out. So we need some quality control. It's not a blank check, and it is important. So don't think that mediocre is good enough, because we need our best effort given.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. And Mr. Schweitzer?
Certainly in favor of quality roads, and that's, like I think as Mike had started out with it, it's one of the things that government's responsible for. I know being on a township board, if we have to raise a mill levy, if we're not maintaining the roads already, it's a lot harder to sell that raise in the mill levy to our constituents. But when they see us actively maintaining the roads and doing a good job maintaining the roads, it's a lot easier to sell that. But I think, if we tried to pave them all and then having to foot the bill to maintain all that paving, that would just be out of question, something that's not feasible. And so I think we still have to approach it with common sense, from the foundation all the way up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. Mr. Schwertfeger, any comment?
Agree with Steve. I've been on the Miami Township Board as a trustee for the last 24 years. People expect their roads to be as good as you can make them, and that includes trees hanging over the road. And well, that's kind of a local issue, but not so much state. But when you're given a job to do, you do the best that you can. People expect it.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we're going to move on to question 11. This will be the last question tonight before we move on to closing statements. So we will go back to starting with the 102nd House District on this question, and Kyler Sweely will go first. What is the key issue in the state legislature that you are most passionate about that you want to see accomplished in your first year?
I've said it a couple times, property tax and tax relief. We need a real bill that does real things for our citizens. And I don't think it's been stepped up for. I don't think this district's been stood up for. And I just think we get sold out to the governor every single time. Property tax is my main thing. We need to stop pricing people out of their homes. We need to stop pricing people out of their businesses. And we need to stick up for our citizens and constituents. And I think that's lacking in the 102nd District right now. And that's why I'm running.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweely. Next, Tyson Thrall.
I think I would be eager to move even further with the ESG stuff that Mike was talking about. I just think that that's a bad idea that we cannot let into our state for sure. I just think we need to definitely not bow the knee to the federal government, keep them in their place. More things are required of the state than there is the federal government. So I would be eager to continue that fight in the ESG stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thrall. And Mr. Sweely, a 30-second rebuttal.
I could sit up here all day and talk about social issues and everything, and that's a priority of mine as well. But the biggest priority that we need to do is get the money back in our constituents and citizens' pockets, and it's lacking. We have a representative that votes lockstep with the governor, and our governor votes lockstep with President Biden. And it's a shame that we're in this position, but we need somebody that's not deadlocked into the Democratic Party and indebted to the Democratic Party. We need someone to stand up, and we need someone that can actually speak up and vote what they think and what is best for the district instead of what their party thinks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweely. And for the 114th House District, Steve Schweitzer.
I touched on it a little bit earlier on transmission lines, and I'd been following some of the debate. It might have only been a committee on what to do on regulation. I know some of the companies that are building transmission line across the state, to transfer that wind generation and solar generation to other states. They're kind of running roughshod over some of the state landowners in building those. And understand, some of these companies have invested 20 years in getting their permitting, to build these transmission lines. And so, just steps like that in order to stand up for some of the rights of our property owners and for Kansans in general.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And Mr. Schwertfeger.
So many issues. How can you just pick one? Tax relief, yes. ESGs, no. We don't need those in Kansas. That's ridiculous. To pick one, wow. We need more American energy and less foreign interest energy. We need more oil and gas. We need more coal, things that we already have. Clean burning coal. Not so high on the wind energy, but that's a local decision for our county commissioners. Thank you to the county commissioners for wading through these things. And
Thank you.
thank you for all being here and listening to us ramble on.
Thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. Mr. Schweitzer, you have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal.
No, there are a lot of issues, and Tyson mentioned the ESG, and that's been a huge one. It just really doesn't have any place in Kansas, and that would be another thing that I'd be in favor of overseeing.
All right, and we'll move on then to the 34th Senate District, Bob Fee.
Property taxes for sure is one that I would like to focus on, and if there are ways that we can reduce or alleviate at the state level property tax, that will benefit our local units of government that rely on it. I was in Kingman a few weeks ago and heard a story about a business that went to the State Board of Tax Appeals and was able to appeal their property taxes to the tune of about $800,000 that they got in relief. But that fell on, Kingman can't just get rid of that, so that fell onto the property owners in Kingman, the homeowners for the most part. We need to make sure that all levels of government, all agencies, including Board of Tax Appeals, are legit and are listening and are doing the right things and not just giving tax abatements when one is not deserved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fee. And last question then for Michael Murphy, same question. What is the one thing that you are most passionate about that you want to see accomplished in your first year in the Senate?
Well, I'm not going to just give you one because there's three things on my list. Things I've been working on. I was actually the second legislator in the country to start ESG legislation. We got some of that through. This is a protection for our people, for our state, and I want to further that work. Property tax, once again, and I'm going to work on that plan to give everybody. Wouldn't it be great to just own your property and not pay rent to the government every month, every year? And then the other thing is I'm working on the transactional gold and silver. I have a bill last year. We kind of ran in a little bit late last year, but I'm going to see that through. So those three things are really high on my list.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Fee, you have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal.
I have nothing to rebut, just to say that I do believe that educational excellence in the state of Kansas is something that will drive our economic development, and it will help enhance the living here in the state of Kansas. So I think that that's another focus that we should have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fee. All right, so we'll move on to closing statements. Those will be 2 minutes, and again, we'll have the 30-second warning with the yellow card and the red card and the bell at the 2-minute mark. And we'll begin here on the left with Mr. Bob Fee.
Well, I want to say thank you once again to the Chamber for hosting this, and appreciate everyone for coming out and listening to us. I also want to say thank you to the gentlemen up here who are running for office. It's not an easy thing to do, to put yourself out and to share yourself with the public in hopes of getting elected and serving. I said in my opening, service is a responsibility. Service is not something you take lightly. And when you are elected and an elected servant of the people, you should do a very good job at listening, at trying to learn, at trying to understand, and at trying to do the best job that you can across the board. And one thing that I failed to do, and I often learn from my own failures, is I failed to mention my wife of 35 years who's here and we have 4 children as well, and 2 grandchildren and 3 in-laws. And so one of the things that is of value to me is family. And Kansas is a big family. We have a lot of internal disagreements. We have a lot of great things and great times, but we have a lot of struggles. And our motto fits us well: to the stars through difficulty. And I believe that when we come together as Kansans and we work together and we believe in what we believe in core value-wise, we can make a difference, we can make a change, and we can make changes for the better. And I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fee and Mr. Michael Murphy.
Once again, thank you all for being here and the opportunity to be here. As I said in my opening statement, I'm concerned for our country and our state. I feel I'm being led by God to serve each of you as your next senator. Our God-given rights are enshrined in our Kansas and our U.S. constitutions, and we must do everything we can to protect them. In Topeka, it's not easy to do the right thing because of the corruption and the influence peddling that takes place. Topeka's broken, and this is the reason. I'm sorry. You recently got a mailer, probably in the mail, that said Topeka's broken. And it's true. The mailer is correct. Topeka's broken because of the lobbyists and the influence that's done. They buy politicians. They use their leverage to tell leadership what to do, and it's just you lose your representation by having that. I'm not that person. I can't be bought. I'll stand in the gap for you. It's been an honor to represent the 114th District, and I hope that as you go to the polls on August 6th, that you'll say, I like Mike, and vote for me as your next senator.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And next, we'll hear a closing statement from Kyler Sweely.
I want to thank the chamber and, thank all you guys for listening to us pretty much say very similar answers on every question, but still sitting here with us. It's the greatest honor of my life to serve this country and, wake up every morning and put that flag on my shoulder, represent America overseas, here in the States. And it would be the greatest honor to support this community and serve this community. I think we have a lack of that. We have somebody in office right now that thinks it's okay for men and women's sports. And we have someone that's in office right now that thinks men belong in little girls' bathrooms. And we have someone in office that continues to abandon, constitutional rights like the Second Amendment. I was the only candidate in my race to be endorsed by the NRA, and I'm proud to say that I will fight for your constitutional rights and continue to serve my people in this country and Kansas. We need to put Kansas first. And I think it's lacked, and like Mike said, Topeka is broken, and it continues to do so. Someone that's indebted to the governor, or someone that comes back and says he's moderate about certain votes, and he's really not. I mean, he's pretty public on a blog and the newspaper and everything else like this, but any social issues he will not talk about because he knows his district's conservative, and he continues to just vote however he wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweely. And next, closing statements from Tyson Thrall.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, because it is your duty to be here, really, to sift who are you going to have represent you. I want to share a quote with you from James Garfield. James Garfield, if you don't know, was our 20th president. Back in 1881. He was only our president for a few months because he got assassinated. So he said, now, even back then, right? He said, now more than ever, it is the responsibility of the people to choose their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because we tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. But if they are intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because they demand those high qualities of the people, of the representative. So you guys need to sift, all of us up here, you need to demand high quality of people, because then you will get a good return on your investment. If you don't do that, don't be surprised when you get ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. That's just plain and simple. Biblical, historical, constitutional perspective. That's what you will get from me, and the LIFT principles: limited government, individual liberties, free enterprise, and timeless truths. That's what you get from me as a candidate. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad that you guys are here because you need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thrall. And next, we'll hear from Steve Schweitzer.
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. Thank you, Chamber, for inviting us here. I appreciate your time taken out in the evening to come here. Looking at this journey that I'm on right now, it's not going to be an easy one. I'm going to be working with people that are exactly polar opposites of where I'm at politically, fundamentally, and just in manner of speaking. But I'm going to have to, deal with those people, work with those people, and trying to manage the interest of my constituents to the best of my abilities. I know Kevin and I, there's not a lot of difference between us, in case you guys haven't guessed that this evening. And I really feel for our constituents and having to vote for us. But I believe in Almighty Creator God, and His hand is in this, and so He'll determine who is going to go to Topeka ultimately. But I'm going to have to work with those people if you elect me there, and so I will do my best to stand firm on what I believe and not sell out, and do it in as kind and loving way as I could possibly can, because that's really going to be hard to do. So I'm going to need a lot of wisdom and discernment. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. And last closing statement from Kevin Schwertfeger.
A verse that's special to me. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? I am a Republican that's striving for a stronger Kansas. We need a Republican in the White House. We need that to trickle down, and federal policy to help our state as well. We need a Republican governor, and we need more Republicans in office to get things done that need done. I've been a volunteer firefighter for the last 20 plus years. I enjoy serving people. I appreciate my friend running next to me. We both think alike on many things. And I enjoyed serving as chairman of the Republican Party of Reno County years ago. You do have to deal with a lot of different viewpoints and forge forward in a positive way. And through more communication, we all can do better as we strive for a stronger Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Schwertfeger. That concludes the forum for tonight. Please, everyone, join me again in giving a big round of applause and thank you to these candidates.